Bu Stage 2'de yaptığınız şeyin aslında artık hani geliştirdiğiniz fikirlerin uygulamalarıyla ilgili eskizler, işte ne bileyim başka referans şey yapıyorsanız o referanslar ve Cinema 4D dosyaları. Ama Cinema 4D dosyaların hani dediğim gibi bitmiş proje olması gerekmiyor. Ama işte denediğiniz farklı şeyleri içermesi lazım. Yani bu aşamada ne kadar fazla deneme yaparsanız o kadar iyi. Çünkü yorum alabileceğiniz ve olmayan şeyleri sorabileceğiniz bir zaman önümüzdeki hafta. Ders bittiği için daha sonrasında daha zor olacak. Hani öyle bir iletişim şansı.
2 tane daha soru sorabilir miyim?
İngilizce olursa olur.
Hocam ders başlamadı.
Hadi sor tamam.
Ek ders olacak mı bu dersler bittikten sonra? Ya zorunlu değil de hani belki isteğe göre ofis ağı gibi.
Bir sonraki hafta gibi mi mesela? Yani herkesten öyle bir şey gelirse ortak bir saat belirleyebiliriz. Yani yine ders saati gibi bir şey olabilir.
İkinci sorumda geçen senenin bu final örnekleri var mı, bakabilir miyiz?
Onun işleyişi biraz daha farklıydı. Doğrudan bir şey değil o yüzden. Gerçi görmeseniz daha iyi. Çok yönlendirmesin yani. Sonra gösteririm. Bence güzel gidiyorsunuz bu arada. Yani güzel fikirler var. Yani o yüzden yönlendirmek de istemiyorum.
Notlandırma kriteriniz var mı? Ne için?
Efendim?
Notlandırma kriteriniz olacak mı mesela?
Var tabii. Ha sizde mi paylaştığım?
Yani dikkat edeceğiniz şeyleri söyleyin.
Onları söylerim. Zaten şeyde de son aşamanın şeyinde de yazar onlar. Hani yani dikkat edeceğim şeyleri yazıyorum zaten. Okay, so this is the part in which I'll show you some examples on how to do the things that I've shown. In, for example, let's open this. For example, let's start with, for example, I'll show you all of the scenes like a fast track like this, and please let me know which parts you are curious the most, for example. So, which one? This one. Okay. One of them is this, and who else? If you're also curious about a different part, let me know. Okay, this one and this one. Other than that, that's maybe too fast. This one? Okay. By the way, this is also a viewport render. This one. It's coming, I guess. This is also a viewport render. So it depends on the materials. Okay, so this one, and this one. So let's start with this one. So this is apart from the background stars, which are made with again a cloner. By the way, for example, let me show you first to do a star field maybe. That's a very simple one. By the way, I want to make this background black. So for that I'll just add a sky object that is here. Okay. And then to the sky object I'll create a material. And in the basic tag I'll deselect all of these so it's flat black. Okay. So I'll drag this to here and it makes the background completely black. So then I'll create a sphere and make it tiny. And then I'll create another sphere to clone these little spheres onto. And create a cloner. This is the light version. Okay. Okay, I created a sky material and created a black material, a default material by double clicking here and deselected all of them so that it became pitch black. I've created a sphere to clone objects onto. Okay, and then I've created a smaller one to be the stars. Then I'll create a cloner, select the object mode and select the large sphere and then put this small sphere inside the cloner. So I'll change the mode to, let's say, vertex so that it becomes more dense. I'll change the mode of the sphere to icosahedron to obtain a more like evenly distributed object distribution. I'll increase this. Okay, I have now plenty of spheres, but they are all aligned on the same surface, but I want them to be scattered across the space. So to do that, I'll go to the random effector in the effectors section. So as soon as I do that, it kind of does the job, but I want them to be scattered, not this, okay, this. So this is the direction that I want them to be scattered so that, and maybe the sphere needs to get larger. So when I do that, although from around it seems to be distributed, when you go inside you see that they are still very evenly distributed because in direction wise. So I also add these, increase these values so that when I now start to look around, they start to give the illusion of the parallax effect. That, let's create an object at the center so that, okay. So when I look around that, they start to give the illusion of that space distribution. So I can even make this even larger. So some of them are very close and some of them are very far away. So that is basically it, okay? By the way, if you want to only show the objects in your scene, there's a filter for that. For example, you can go to the filter menu and select geometry only. That hides all the gizmos, grid lines and planes that are displayed in your viewport so that only the geometry that you've created is visible, okay? So it's nice to use that method when previewing things. Okay, so now I have my star field. I'll delete this and I'll add a sphere and add a displacer on top of that to have that Rorschach effect that I've shown. So that is, displacer is here. If you hold Shift key while clicking this, it will immediately add that object to the as a child of the object that was selected. Okay, that's a shortcut. So now I have my displacer here. I'll go to the shading tab of it, and in the shader I'll add a noise. So as soon as I add it, you see that it starts to get distorted like this maybe, but it's very sharp. So either I can increase the segments like this. I'll increase the segments of the sphere, and also I'll increase the scaling of this noise here because it's very dense. So the extrusions are very dense here, deformations are very dense on the object surface. So if I increase this, so you'll see that how smooth it becomes, even more like this. There's always an intricate balance between these different parameters, like this scale and the resolution or the subdivision of this object here, okay? So you need to explore different values in relation to each other. Nothing is by its own in these procedural systems. So if something is not working as you intended to be, just check different extreme values, like making the subdivision very high, very low, or like this scale of this thing very high and low. So, and observe what happens when you do those, okay? So also I can use different noise types here, like this. And now, since this is a very sharp displacement, okay, the resolution seems to be working nice, but I don't want it to be like to have very sharp corners like this. So instead of using very high segments for this, I'll just do this, like 50 segments, and I'll add a subdivision surface to make this appear like this maybe. So I wanted this piece a little bit smoother. So notice that how if I add a subdivision surface on top, the sphere, changes in the sphere has very different effects on the visualization of the final form. Anyway, I'll try the other normal noise here to see the effect that I'm doing. Okay, since this is an unsymmetrical object, but the Rorschach tests are based on symmetry, so that's what I'll do. By the way, I'll delete this or subdivision surface, and I'll just add a symmetry object and put this inside that. Okay, so here is our Rorschach now. I can even, let's show these objects. I can even like move this like this. Okay, you can see that how immediately it started to resemble this, right? So if I animate this motion, this noise here, let's change the animation speed. So it allows me to, and also maybe a loop period of 3 seconds. It allows me to create a system that allows the viewer to interpret it in a way, in many ways, for example. Let's make it 10 seconds. Okay. And since I make this change very slow, like this maybe, the whole in the whole period of the song, the viewers are always seeing different images there. But now it's not smooth like this because like there are sharp parts. I can either increase this or maybe keep this lower and add a smoothing operator there, like this. No. Okay. After displacer maybe. Yeah. Okay. And maybe play with the strength. But if I want a more detailed surface, because like so that there can be more shadows and light parts, I can decrease the scale of this noise like this, so that, but smoothing does, okay, I can do this maybe. And then on top of it, I can add a subdivision surface so that it makes it smoother, but a more detailed surface, okay? So the thing that is left is creating shadows and light parts. So for that, I'll just add a light here and drag this down like this. Okay. And this is now, there are very soft shadows, but I can deal with that in the properties of the light object here. In details part, there's contrast. So if I increase it very high, so it becomes more like a vector thing. So that's all. Emre has missed. Now I just added, like, I'll delete this. Okay, you've seen this part, right? So the only thing that I did was to add a light. So by the way, when there's no light in Cinema 4D, there's a default lighting setup in just for us to be able to see the objects. But if you add a new light, the default lighting is automatically turned off. So now it's only taking this light into account and calculates the lighting based on this. So, and in the light's properties, like the details property, there's a contrast property. So I'll increase that to 1000. And also there's something called fall off. If I change that, you can experiment with these also. If I change it inverse square, it's black and white. So now I have the effect that I want. Okay. So now I can have an ink blot-like appearance here, and also now notice how it will change with different, for example, let's say noise types. Okay. In box, for example, I don't know. This is cell noise. Yeah, that was my main intention, to enable people to imagine things there. So just like, for example, seeing figures in the clouds. So notice how different noise types immediately changes the appearance of this. Also, for example, the scaling. So if I increase it very high, the scaling, for example, it allows you to create like infinite kind of options. Like I can increase the speed. It can give a different feeling related to this object, or I can decrease it very low. Okay, so this was the base of that idea. And you can see that, like, with very few objects, you can create interesting things. Okay.
Hocam yan tarafta bağlanan şeyler yapmışsınız böyle. Onları nasıl eklediniz mesela buraya?
Which one? You mean this one?
Burada aynı.
Okay, I'll show that also. So this might be like a bug-like thing, I don't know. Anyway, so let's pass on to the next example. So let's create two planes. And this is very similar to the displacer example. This one is also done with the displacer. So I'll just increase this and see this. And let's make it vertical, so like this. And make something like this and add a symmetry there so that it becomes two planes. And I'll add a displacer again to the plane and add a noise. And in the object, I'll increase the noise like this. Okay. Let's make it smoother by increasing the scale and also adding some subdivisions there, maybe like this. So then I'll animate this in the noise by changing the animation speed, let's say. So now I have a basic setup that can be used for the cloner to clone objects onto, right? So this will be my mesh that will be moving the clones. So I'll add, I'll add a cloner, and I added actually a cone to represent spikes here, and in the cloner I'll select the object mode, and the object will be the plane, but their directions are wrong. So I'll either change the direction in the cone. Yeah, okay, this is correct then. But I don't know why it doesn't. Okay, it doesn't clone into the second one.
Belki plane'inde simetriye eklememiz gerekiyor. Yani cloner'da plane'inde simetriyi seçmemiz gerekiyor.
No, but yeah, that would be a little bit less resource friendly, but yeah. Okay, so let's choose vertex. So when I choose vertex, you can see how it behaves. Now I have a spiky surface like this. Okay. So obviously I can, instead of like selecting the vertex mode, I can select surface and allow, adjust the number or animate this number. Okay. And also if I enable scaling, these can also be scaled according to the deformation that this noise is causing on the surface of the object. So as I said, like everything is like a balance between different values. So something that is very ugly at first might become very beautiful and I don't know, serene or sublime, or I don't know, hysteric, depending on the parameters that you choose. So for example, I only change the noise type. Okay. So everything changes. So also I only added this scale, enable scaling thing, and that changes. Sorry, let's do that. That changes the overall impression of the system to the viewer. Okay. So I can also change the dimension like this so that it becomes more like a corridor like thing. Okay. So yeah, I'll show you a quick and cool way to make things look cool maybe. So I'll add a material. You can immediately create a metallic-like object by going to the reflectance and choosing the type as GGX here. And then, okay, disable color, go to the reflectance again, and increase reflection strength like this and decrease roughness so that it becomes like a shiny metal object. And if I drag this onto the plane and cloner, they all become metallic-like surfaces. But the noise is a little bit ugly, I guess. So I'll change that to normal noise. Okay, and increase the scaling like this. Okay, so also you can actually enable the color, but change the color to black. No, it doesn't change something. Make this darker maybe. And go to the geometry only mode. And maybe I can copy the sky object that I created in the other one, the black one, to this scene. Then it loses its reflections. So sky is not always a good idea, but I can, for example, create a sphere and make it so big that it becomes something like a sky object. And I'll just drag this material here so that the environment becomes black, but we don't lose the reflections on these materials. Okay. Yeah, so instead of cones, I could have used cubes, obviously. So it gives a complete different kind of appearance here. And also maybe enable scaling again on the edge. Let's say scale on edge. No. Polygon center. Okay, like this. So that they are scaled according to the polygon size. I can also make them pop out like this. Okay. Of course, like if you like a little bit smoothness on the edges, you can select the cube and choose fillet so that it becomes a little bit more realistic in terms of geometry, because in nature nothing is like very sharp, but everything has some smoothness in it. Okay. So of course, like sometimes metal is not that beautiful, so let's say the color white can also something nice. Or maybe, for example, you want some shadow play. Okay, this is a very simple thing, but let's make it looping so that it becomes more beautiful. Loop period to 3, or I'll just make it 180 and make it 6 seconds so that it's a little bit slower. So I'll add a light, but it adds, okay, this might be nice also. So by default, the shadows are not on, I guess. So in the options, you can go here and enable shadows, and also go to the light and the shadow parameter. It's by default set to none. If I make it to soft, you'll see that how shadows started to appear on the viewport, or ray traced hard. It depends. Let's play with the position of light. So notice that how the shadows are elongated when I change the position of the light. Okay. So this becomes like a shadow play, light play. So
Hocam bunu kısa bir renderlasanız görüyoruz. Renderlamayı görmesiniz.
okay, so you mean how to record this as a video file, right? Okay, for this, actually there's a video link for that, but since I've already done this, I can go on and show you how to do that. So this is the OpenGL viewport render, right? This is also rendering in a way, but it's very fast in real time. So I don't want these grids or these gizmos to appear in the render. For that, I go to the filter menu and select geometry only. Okay, so now I only see the geometry, nothing else, no guides and no gizmos and all that stuff. So I align my viewport. This I can use and hit render like this, but I can also create a camera and adjust these perspective maybe. So I can render this also. So this is active. So here you have the buttons related to the rendering part. So I have to edit render settings at first. So because by default, if you go to the render and render view, it will use its like not OpenGL viewport renderer, but the standard renderer there. By default, it's set to standard. But if you set the viewport renderer, then this means the renderer that renders this viewport, it's the same as this viewport. Okay, if you want fast renders, you can use this viewport renderer. So you'll define the resolution. Let's make it 1080p. Okay, and the frame rate and the frame range. So by default, it's set to a single frame. So I'll just select the preview range so that it starts here and ends here. So it starts at the 0th frame and ends at the 180th frame. Okay. So now it says that frames is like there are 181 frames to render. Okay. So now I've set the resolution and the frame rate and the range to render. I'll go to the save section. This is the section where you tell where to save the file or files. So I'll just add to desktop, cubes, tests, let's say. And this format is, you can render this as image sequences, like different files for frame 0, 1, 2, 3. Each frame is rendered as a different JPEG file, PNG or TIFF or that kind of stuff. But you can also render all the 181 frames as a single MP4 or MOV file. So I'll just select MP4 for now. And by default, the data rate is, by default, it's a very low number, so I prefer it to 20,000 kilobits per second. And that's all. You name your animation, you select the format, and you select the data rate. That's all. Okay. Oh, okay. Another one, viewport render. These are related to the, for example, the shadows will be rendered, or reflections will be rendered, the depth of field will be rendered, etc. After you are happy with this, with the things that you've seen here, and also you had hit geometry only here, and select the options from here, and you can hit this button, copy effects from viewport, to replicate the settings here in this one. And also in filter, I'll just select geometry only so that it won't render any of this. And that's all. Okay, so I can close this and hit render to picture viewer. So now you'll see how fast it renders, like it will be finished in just in a moment. That's all. So all your scene is rendered now. And Cube's test MP4 is created. And I'll open loop mode. So this is the rendered animation. Yeah, so this is 180p, so this screen is much higher, but no, the projector is not that high. So of course, like there are some more settings to that. For example, let's say if you want higher quality renders, in the viewport render, in the basic setting, there are some anti-aliasing settings here. So for example, I can increase this to this and save it as another file here and just see the difference if it makes any difference at all. So we'll see. I'm now rendering the second one, but the rendering speed has decreased a little, so it takes a little bit more time. Okay. So notice that how these parts are a little bit sharper in this one. This is like a jagged edge here. It's more apparent in my screen also. Like, let's play this one. Yeah, this is sharper. So that anti-aliasing setting is an important one. But for example, if you want even more smoother videos in terms of geometry, you can go here and increase the super sampling here. What it does is, for example, if your resolution is a full HD, it doubles that resolution. It renders the double resolution and scales it down to full HD. So because of that downsampling, the result becomes smoother, but it takes 4 times longer, I guess. Let's. Now, this is still fast, but in some instances, especially if when your overall resolution is higher, it even takes more time. I'm not sure if it did that, or maybe it didn't. Okay, 4x4. Let's try that. Okay, now it's a little bit slower. Yeah, much slower actually. Because it renders a 4 times larger image. But still, it's like much faster than the physical or standard render. So, and if you do the settings right, the lighting and shadows and all that stuff, it gives up pretty decent results. But you can see now that this is very smooth geometry there. So yeah, this is how we do viewport rendering.
Nice.
Of course, like you can, yeah, this doesn't has to be white. can be any color. And also it can be combined with the shader effects, like the shader coloring, so it can create more interesting results. Okay. And yeah, this I've kind of shown this also. I've shown this one. What was the other? This one, right? Do I remember? That's a much more complex thing, I guess. But
göstermek zorunda değilsiniz yani.
I'm trying to remember, huh?
Fikir edinme açısından yeterli şimdiye kadar.
Okay, so
Hatırlamıyorsanız göstermek zorundayız.
yeah, there are. Okay, make some guesses then. It's your turn. So not this one, but this one. Cloner is the default ingredient of this show.
Hocam atomeray cloner'la farklı mı?
Sorry?
What's the difference between atomeray and cloner?
There's a huge difference. So what atom array does is, like, for example, it kind of, okay, let me show. Okay, when you use this cube inside a cloner, it replicates the geometry, but if you use cube inside an atom array, it does this. So it renders the edges and vertices as objects in a way. So of course, like in an atom array, you can throw a mesh. Let's say a simpler mesh. Was it post? Okay. So whatever you put inside the atom array uses this geometry's vertices and edges to create, for example, it creates cylinders on the edges and spheres on the vertices. So if I open this, you'll see that all these spheres are located in the vertices of the geometry. Okay, and also you can adjust the radius, of course, and of the cylinders and of the spheres there. And also, for example, you can combine this with a displacer. Sorry. And like this. And I'll create a noise again. Okay. Not something I expected. It kind of destroys. Okay, if I put this inside, notice the difference here. Like, if I put the displacer inside the mesh, it distorts the mesh. But if I put this alongside with this, it distorts the atom arrays generated mesh, right? So there are intricate differences between those. So let's create something like this. Deconstruction of identity. My new artwork. So yeah, also atom array is another way of making cool things quick and fast, maybe in a way. Okay, so yeah, I was collecting your guesses, bets on this.
Hocam bence iç çemberi birleştirmişsiniz. Ortaya iç çemberden koyuyorsunuz.
Sorry.
I should open semaphore to remember the terminology.
Okay, so this can be an exercise. Just try to do something like this and I can show you how it's done. So it doesn't matter if you do it wrong or right, but just watch it and